Here we go. All right, so this is Team 3's AAPTEL Task 1 Zoom session, and I'm going to be the Zoom master for this session. I'm Stephanie Nodelman from Langtree Charter.
I'm Shabazi Baird from Quality Education Academy.
And I'm Nancy Herrera from Lincoln Christian School.
And our format for today is we're going to go through the 5 parts of the AAPTEL and share a resource or something that we appreciated or something we found, or even name something that we would use in our school for that section. All right, so the first one we're going to start with is building efficacy and empowerment among staff. While doing the research for this section, I really found that a good resource was a book that one of my colleagues from a different school gave me called Culturize. And it was all about building your school as from teacher leaders, and as a leader of the school, how to empower the leaders in that school. And it's from a principal who's worked for him a lot of years. And it just was a really powerful resource. And I started reading it in August, but it really fit into when we started doing all the research for the AAPTEL. I'm like, oh, this could be a really good resource for this, because it's something that I feel that I'm going to use as a leader. But it's a book by Jimmy Cassius, and it's just, there's a lot of good quotes and a lot of good things to think about on how to treat your staff when you're in the building, and how to go about having a conversation with them, or different instances. You have to prioritize, but your building is the most important, and your people in the building are the most important. So it just resonated with me as a really good resource.
Right, and as far as building efficacy and empowerment among staff, I loved that there were so many authors who said that it was the ability and desire to achieve goals. And what really stood out to me was the internal and intrinsic motivations that a teacher needed, that is to set and reach their goals. And people who perform differently are the ones who are typically weeded out in education, for lack of a better word. I also loved how one author used the Oz principle of accountability to allow staff to really see, if they were there for student learning. And the OS principle was abbreviated SOSD, which stands for see it, own it, solve it, and do it. So see it is identifying the problem, owning it is taking ownership, solving it is using that extra step that you have to achieve a goal, and doing it, of course, would be actually putting it into action. As far as empowerment, I loved how Whitaker kept referring to it as a reform measure, and it allows the teachers to create autonomy. He also said, what if every teacher in your school was like the best teacher in your school? That really stuck out to me, because you're using what you have.
In my research, I found that Bandura also mentioned that you give teachers the empowerment to make tasks or decision making based off of or whatever they are involved in, that they are better to perform themselves, and that they feel that they can accomplish or solve any task that comes their way. If you step out and let them take lead, then things will run smoother, and they'll have a better buy-in to the school and into the vision of the school. That's what I thought of that's what I came across when I was looking at efficacy and empowerment. Heslin also said the main thing is the principal or administrator needs to actually take a huge step back. Some principals tend to still hang on to some power. I do agree with, as an administrator, overseeing certain tasks, but not to micromanage your people, in the sense that they are educated professionals and they know what they're doing, and they're going to look out, hopefully, the best interest of the student.
Yeah, I think one of our the hardest things too is when you're going into a school. Like I've been in schools where there's a really negative culture between the teachers and admin, and then I've been in other schools where there's a really positive culture. And I know that it takes a lot of time, but for the principal to actually trust the teachers and then empower them is one of the things that will help build the efficacy in the building and then empower them even more to become teacher leaders.
And also, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, just thinking about if a visitor who was coming in can feel that same energy, just think about what it's doing to the scholars that you're serving every day, and how, you know, when we think of schools who are not performing or schools who are performing well, these are the topics that they're looking at: efficacy and how principals are empowering the staff.
I agree. Stepping into a school for the first time is challenge in itself. And then reading your staff to see where they are and, you know, what the relationship was with the prior administrator and moving forward with a positive environment, you know, that is a definite challenge.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then our second section is talking about the results-oriented professional development. And there were a lot of resources about professional development, but they all kind of lean towards saying, make sure it's worthwhile for teachers, that they can bring those materials back into the classrooms, and that they are actively learning. Because if it just like when we're standing in front of classrooms as teachers, like we want our students to pay attention. If we just talk to them for 45 minutes, they're going to start to get bored. So, but if the professional development is more hands-on and it gets the teachers to be able to see how these activities and strategies would work in their classrooms, it would be a lot more effective. And one of the things too was allowing teachers to have a choice of their professional development instead of just making all teachers take one, because your PE teacher might not need your literacy training that you do at the beginning of every year, but maybe there's something online that does relate to them, especially with having to go virtual this year. Our whole special area team had to learn a lot about virtual teaching and learning. And our principal found it's a online professional development called Simple K-12 that you can actually go in and you pick the professional development you want. So instead of assigning a specific reading and literacy and math this year, she said, find PDs that pertain to you, and I want you to do 10 hours of them by the end of the school year. So it was basically allowing us the autonomy to pick things that related to us. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of our authors talked about was allowing teachers, like making it meaningful for the teachers, and then also giving them a choice to pick what PDs would work for them.
Excellent. The thing that stuck out to me in the professional development section was the different steps that it takes a principal to actually analyze to see if professional developments and other opportunities are working in your school. One step was exposure, having the school administrator just expose their idea to the staff. So creating that buy-in, which goes back to teacher empowerment. How am I going to build up my staff to get them to understand what we need to help this scholars grow? Also, implementation and student outcomes. So at the end of the day, what are the students doing? How are they achieving because you chose the correct professional development for your teachers? Of course, they always mention in class Linda Darling Hammond, and one of the things that she said was it yields results for both teaching and learning. And she also stated that professional development has changed over the years, and it looks different in depending on your lens. So it may look different if you're a pre-service teacher because you are essentially in classes, and when it's time for you to actually do your student teaching, you'll pull in everything from your mental toolbox to assist you. She says it may look different from beginning teachers and veteran teachers because we know that professional development sometimes is not necessarily centered around our areas of expertise. And the two questions that should be asked during professional developments is how will it be measured, as far as using the formative assessments and summative assessments, and how did the students' behavior change? So did they increase in their learning or decrease?
Yes, I also found that with professional development, first of all, it needs to be a time where other teachers can collaborate, not just, and I know this looks different for schools, like for example, kindergarten through fifth grade or sixth grade through seventh grade might be grade specific in their PLCs. High school is mixed in most of the time with all subjects. So, you know, I might be in a group with an English teacher, a history teacher, and a PE teacher, but they were looking more for, or in my research that I found, was more for collaborating with other teachers and how do they collect data? How do they know what the students are learning? How do they know that students are moving from one level to the next? What are they doing differently? And for this professional development to really focus on that particular area instead of just on teacher ideas. For example, now I do know with this time frame that learning more about technology is best for teachers because of the whole virtual online, but you also need to mix in other, and I agree with the doing kind of like workshops so that teachers can pick and choose what avenue or what area they want to go and learn about.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is one of the hardest things just from being a teacher for so long. Every year, you know, you have the same professional developments coming, and you're like, I just hope that this person is
Mhm.
just going to be worth it, or I hope it's not a waste of my time by the time you walk in. So I think as long as I mean, one goal is, I guess, just to make sure that it is meaningful for staff. I mean, you have your required ones you have to do from the state or for like safe and health and all that kind of stuff. But there has to be different professional developments that you can bring in that might be different than just somebody speaking to a PowerPoint the whole time.
Right. And I also read that you should allow your staff to have input into what they need or what they feel like the professional development should be.
Yeah.
And just looking, well, I'm going ahead to task two, but looking at some of our survey results from my school, the teachers really didn't feel like they had the opportunity to pick, even though as a leader at the school, we're always pushing it, but you know, it may not be coming off that way that teachers have the opportunity to lead and pick their own professional development.
Right. Yeah. All right, so moving on to our third part, recruitment, placement, and mentoring. Now, I found a lot of articles on the mentoring staff and having mentoring programs and working with teachers, and but I did not find a lot on recruitment. But I think all the ones that I did find on recruitment, I just thought it was interesting because it's all districts, and even my charter school's in a district, so the people have to apply to the district, and the district decides if you get an interview with the schools. And like in Charlotte Mech, like I applied to the Charlotte Mech website, but then the application is sent to the schools, and if the schools want to hire me they can, or want to interview me they can. So it's kind of like the school system, schools sometimes don't get a lot of say in who they can recruit. I mean, they can have job fairs and recruitment fairs, but they don't really get to recruit as a personal school unless you're an individual charter, because the one charter that I did work at was able to recruit and have job fairs of their own. But my current charter, it's more as a school system because there's a couple, we have sister schools in our charter. So I just thought it was interesting that of the lack of help that you could get with just finding to recruitment. But I do think it has to do with just being districts control sometimes.
So as I was researching, I saw the same old paradigm that we've heard for years, that teachers leave within the first 5 years of the profession if they find that it may be difficult. I see you guys shaking your head.
Yeah.
So just thinking about the recruitment being aggressive. I saw that novice teachers, they need to be recruited at the beginning of the summer just so they can set their mind around, you know, where they're going to be, which goes into the placement part of it. How are principals placing teachers? Are you placing them according to their needs or your school's needs? Because I read it was one article where a principal hired a fifth grade teacher, but she only had kindergarten and first grade experience. So of course she was not successful. So just he hired based on the school's needs and not really thinking about the teacher at hand. Also, at risk and hard to staff schools, I felt like I really enjoyed that section because I felt like that was something that I was familiar with, working with Title I schools and understanding that sometimes, you know, working at those types of schools, it is a little bit difficult because of, you know, the gaps in socioeconomic status and everything. And mentoring programs, I really didn't find that much, only other than having the beginning teacher support programs. I did read about those and how they actually assign beginning teachers, veteran teachers to check in with and act as a buddy system.
Yes, I basically found the same information about the recruitment that most schools, especially public schools or public charter, are from the district themselves first. And I did read some places that the principals should tap into social media to really boost up some recruitment in that aspect for particular teachers, and like making a list of what they need and not just saying I need a 7th grade history teacher, but being very specific as to what the shoes that person's going to fill, and seek those types of people, and also to involve other teachers in the process. Like I know in my past I have asked other people to look at resumes and, you know, what do you think about this particular person and their background? So I found that in research as well. Like you should allow your teachers to have some input into the process. They will also, when that person is hired on, have a better relationship because they already know something about them. With the mentoring, I also found that they mainly focus on veteran teachers to work with our new people. But I felt like that was a little harsh for some people that are even 4th or 5th year, because there's some 4th and 5th year that are great teachers that should be able to mentor a young one. And let's see, I was looking at being able to, once you do recruit, having a hiring process that you ask the same questions, have the same situations, so that you can decide which one is the better candidate based off of those answers. Because if you ask various questions, I forgot which researcher, I think it was Darish. Um, when you ask the same questions, you can compile the answers and compare like apples to apples. But if you ask different questions, then you're comparing apples to oranges. And that was just a little bit, I guess, biased in some ways.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And our charter school, we're in the middle of three really big districts with CMS and then Mooresville Graded and Iredell Statesville Public Schools. And charter schools don't pay as much. So and the last couple of summers, I've worked with the hiring team, and basically it's a bunch of teachers that use that strategy. We use the same questions for all the people that we're interviewing, but it's also, our principals have told us, they create this team or the interview team from people who can shed a positive light on being in a charter, where we have a little bit more freedom with our curriculum than a state school does, and we're able to do certain things. So even though we can't pay you as much, we can still be a positive, exciting school to work at, because it's a very big challenge too, if you cannot pay as much as a neighboring district, to bring decent, good, strong teachers into your school.
And in my charter, we have actually a three-part hiring phase. We do the preliminary, then we invite you in to actually teach a mock lesson, whether it's in front of, well, this year we couldn't do in person instruction. So we just had to play their teachers and fake it till we made it. And then we actually invite them back for a third round to ask like more of the school sensitive type questions, just to see, how they respond socially. And some teachers who were hired this year, they really said that was the most, intense process that they've been through, but also it's beneficial because they knew exactly what they were getting into before they committed.
And to piggyback off of that, I did remember research that I found stated that to have that vision presented to the candidate up front, so that not only are you there to make the decision based on, is this a good candidate for our school, but then that way they can also make that decision, is this school a good place for me to work? So yes, I saw that whole team suggestion out there with the interviewing process.
Right, yeah. All right, and then our fourth topic is the approaches to or for evaluation of school staff. And in North Carolina, we do have the NESIS that we have to use for our licensed teachers, where teachers that are being renewed or beginning year teachers get observed 3 times in the year using this format, or twice if they are not in their renewal years. So what our principals and admin team has tried to do this year is our walkthrough form, which is we do bi-weekly walkthroughs going through just to check. We're looking for the 4 C's this year. So creative thinking, or creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. So we're basically looking for the 4 C's in our walkthroughs, and it's just to give us a different viewpoint than the very formal observation forms that we have to do. And one of the things that I saw in the research too is you want your evaluation tool and evaluation of staff to match your vision of your school, but then also you have to coach yourself to be able to have that conversation with a teacher if they're not performing the way that you want them to with your evaluation tool. You have to be able to do the crucial conversations, like the books we had to read a long time ago, the crucial conversations of being able to have a conversation where you're coaching that teacher to get them to be where you want them to be as the admin, because you want it to relate to the vision and the mission of your school.
I saw a lot of articles about the ineffectiveness of evaluations because they compared it to actually going to a doctor's office and the doctor checking your vitals. And they were saying that it's just a snapshot in that moment and in that time. So how is it effective for moving classroom instruction? And they were saying that it should benefit the teachers' professional growth and student learning. So when you think about, excuse me, those comprehensive and standard evaluations that you referred to, Stephanie, doing it 3 times or twice a year, how is that beneficial? Excuse me. Also, excuse me, thank you. You should streamline your data, making sure that your evaluation is not too large. We know that with the NESIS, it is a large document that has 5 standards. So is it something that we can shrink? Also, feedback should be for appreciative and constructive feedback. And you should train those other support staff members that are not your principal or assistant principal, so everyone can have hands on deck. and also using your classroom observations, your value added measures, and your other evaluations, such as students and parents and the community, to actually streamline how teachers are evaluated in your school.
Yes, I also found like pros and cons for evaluation, and that the pro is obviously teaching the teacher, uh, almost like focusing in on their weaknesses and how to help them, to make that conversation at the end more of a coaching or mentoring conversation as opposed to you're doing this wrong. Also having more observations so that the teachers realize that it's not just a 3-time deal. You're in the classroom and then that's it. You are more effective with the more observations that you do offer a teacher, because the teacher will be able to see those various snapshots of themselves and be able to evaluate their professional development and help focus them in that area. I do know that getting others involved other than just administration is also, through the research, that is a better, if your or fellow teacher is in there observing you and offering assistance based off of what they see, then it is accepted better than just for an administration, because most people see an administrator's observation as this affects my evaluation process of whether I get hired next year. But if it's a fellow teacher, then they see it as, here's my coworker trying to help me grow and improve my teaching strategies.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback off of that, because we were our admin team this year was talking about the NESIS, which is our official one, and it's hard. They were told by their leadership that not all teachers could meet a certain level. So even if a teacher is proficient, you can't mark all your teachers proficient. You have to have a certain percentage that are advanced or proficient or distinguished or beginner. And we're like, but that's not a true reflection of that teacher, because let's say we have 50 teachers and 47 of them are proficient, we should be able to mark them as proficient, even though, because proficient's like the third one, Nancy, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with NESIS, but it's the but so we had to mark some as like the two level 1 and level 2s, even if they were a level 3 or a level 4, just because their leadership told them you can only have a certain amount of teachers in your school that had it. So it really talks to sometimes school district leadership. They take the evaluation and you're supposed to be able to do a truthful observation of that teacher, but then you hear, oh, now you have to do this, this, and this. So it's not a true reflection of your staff either.
And just thinking about the items that are on the NESA's document, like global awareness, and other items, like how is that supposed to be measured in the 45-minute
Right.
to an hour block that you are doing your observation?
Yeah, one whole section of the standard that is about college readiness and college preparedness and teaching diverse learners in every opportunity you can. Well, in 40 minutes, like, you can't see that.
Yes, we use the advanced Ed Elliott observation tool for our main evaluations, but then we also have one other walkthrough. The other thing that I saw in research is to make 1 or 2 announced and then make the rest of them unannounced, because some people do put on that, for lack of better terms, that dog and pony show during that formal observation, just so they can check the boxes and look good. But then the informal ones would actually give them a better idea of what's really going on in their classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea too. Like, even with the walkthroughs this year, I'm noticing that teachers will like stop what they're doing and like change. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm just here 20 minutes. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Do what you do. I'll be back next week. Like, it's not anything official. But when we have the formal one, in North Carolina, the first one has to be announced. That's what
Mhm.
all teachers has to be announced, but the rest are unannounced. So if you have to have three, your other two are unannounced, or if you only have one more, that one is unannounced. Like we even have to have like a pre-meeting before the observation to go over what the observer will see before it. Like they have to have a pre-observation, then they have the observation, then they have a post-observation conference after. So it gets it really in detail. But again, it's only 45 minutes of the day. It's not their whole life as a teacher. All right, so I guess, are we ready to move on to the last one? For teacher leadership and decision making. One of the things that I found in a lot of the research is that teachers are not the voice that is making the decisions in districts. And I mean, we are seeing that a lot with decisions that have been made in the last couple of years. Well, I mean, even just this summer too, with what's best or safest for students and kids coming in the building. So I guess it's like the balance of you want to empower teachers in their school building, but then also they probably should be a part of some of the decision making. But one thing I did find in the research with when you're making decisions in the school about scheduling, like it's good to have teacher input, but you can't always you can't make everybody happy, so you can't always do what they want. Not everybody can have their electives like at the beginning of the day and lunch in the very middle of the day and recess exactly right after. It just doesn't work with master scheduling. So it's just taking people's ideas but what and then trying to make the best of all worlds just to make it as I guess balance as possible. And then another article was discussing decision making when it came to budget materials or resources. It said that sometimes it's not best to have a teacher pick the books that are being used. And I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that. Like, I like the teacher's opinions to say the curriculum that they use, but they said it should be like a school management or a district level what the actual curriculum should be. And then but teachers could make have input in other areas of the school, but not where it came to the actual curriculum, which I found interesting, even though they're the ones teaching the curriculum.
I was reading that school leadership and decision making has changed from teachers feeling that, oh, I have to be in the center of the school just because I believe that my principal is going to value me or my principal is going to, renew my contract. So it's changed from just looking at it through that lens and becoming more student centered. And it was talking about there were two types of leadership, teacher leadership that was held within the classroom. And if we look at our professional teaching standards from NESIS, then that's one element, teachers leading in the classroom. But how does that leadership in the classroom shift to leading at the school level, and how your leadership will benefit the school directly? So how are your instructional practices so immense that we can now use your practices and share it with the staff? And also read that principals should facilitate distributive leadership to support a positive school climate. So having teachers knowing that they have some input or some say, then that will ultimately create a happy school culture.
Yes, I also read that in fact, the quote is, the greater the employee participation leads to greater ownership and commitment to the organization of the goals. That is true that, if you give them more say, and they're more than likely going to enjoy getting up and coming to work, is basically what the article was saying. But also, I read another article that said that when you're putting teachers into positions, it's not just the one teacher. For example, if you chose a department chair, it's not the one that has always been there or been there the longest or knows the content extremely well. You have to look at all the qualities that the teacher has or the teachers have and pick the right one for the right position. But to examine all your teachers and find out where they would best fit into whatever teams that are there that exist that you want them to work on. That was the main things I was finding in the research.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because you want the teachers to be able to have feel a part of the school that they're teaching at, and especially when you have your team leads, you want it to be somebody who can inspire the teachers around them to be their best. And one of the quotes that came from the Culturize book was talking about the goal is to make the most impact, um, or not to make an impact, but to make the greatest impact that you can among your students and your school. So it's trying to get all the teachers on one place. And if you surround yourself, and it's not always like the positive, happy go lucky people either, or the people that are just straightforward for the curriculum. It's more finding the people that can help build the culture of their team, and then that will help the school or that team be successful, which can in turn help the school be successful.
And I think that was part of North Carolina's reasoning for having the initiative with every school should develop a school improvement team.
Mhm.
So it's, teachers who are in the, for lack of a better word, trenches, and those who can support, education. Like, what decisions should we make at the school level that's going to benefit everyone?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And also that every decision should be based off of what's best for the student, not what's best for the school or what's best for the teacher, but what's best for the student.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So does anybody have anything to add on top of our topics, or do we think that we're good?
I think we're good. Are we ready to talk about some other things that we found interesting?
Yep. So yeah, so we'll stop with talking about our topics. So anything else that anyone wanted to add? Nancy, do you have one to go, or you have one ready?
I do.
All right, go for it.
After doing the survey of teacher working conditions, I know, Shabazi, you brought up earlier that some of your teachers did not feel like they were involved in professional development or something. Ours found that they were not either, which I was kind of surprised because we get emails from the administration, what is it that you feel like you need to work on or improve on? And most of the professional developments are led by the teachers. So I thought that was pretty amazing with their response. Also, the recruitment, placement, and mentoring, it was a huge, strong disagree that they are a part in, but we have a mentoring program. But after examining it, what we do is we have the department chair and they match up. They're the main ones that match up with the mentee. And then if there's an extra person within that department that's new, then they go to the veteran teacher to match up. And again, it's not necessarily the one with the quality. It's just the one who's been there the longest and has higher degree.
Mm.
And so, I mean, it was just weird or an eye opener, I guess, to experience that survey and know the research and see that what is actually happening in my school is not what the research says should be happening. So that was interesting.
I informally shared some of the results with my opposite colleague who supports reading, and she was taken aback as well. So just thinking when we do share it with our school administration, then just think about, how they are going to feel, because we apparently thought that we were doing a great job and moving in the right direction, but, teachers feel otherwise.
Well,
I
and one
also,
thing,
sorry. No, I was just going to say, I also had a comment from a teacher hearing what you just said, Shabaza, that they emailed me before they responded to my survey and they said, will administration see this?
Mm.
I was like, okay.
yeah,
So
I sent the 5-question one out to staff, the checklist that we were given, and that was the big thing. Was it going to be anonymous? So I just did it as like a a SurveyMonkey Google form so it could stay anonymous and nobody would know but me. But we also did our teacher working condition survey, and I was able to go back because our principal kept it. Our school keeps it because we had a different principal for multiple years, because they're trying to see trends on if the school culture is changing or if the teachers are feeling differently. But I think it just had to, like, every year there's going to be people who are negative on it no matter what, just because there's
Mhm.
everybody had a negative section. But depending on the principal, like our principal a couple years ago that was more happy-go-lucky and very like free, like he had a lot of positive marks on school culture. But then we've had a principal that was very meticulous and detail-oriented, and then she had a very like small, she had a smaller percentage of um, agreeing with if they or like how they were able to, or what they were able to do in the school, because she wanted to control it all so the staff wasn't able to. So I think it's just really dependent on the principals, um, I guess, how they run the school and how they want to. But you're always going to have somebody that's negative on it, and it's, I mean, because everybody has a different view of how they see
Mhm.
the school. I mean, and even if you have like 75% of the school say, "Oh, that was great. I loved how you did that." You're going to have 25% say, "Oh man, I can't believe I just wasted my life doing that." So, I think it's
That's true.
because of different perceptions.
I also used an anonymous survey monkey, and that's why I was really shocked with the comment of, will administration see this? So I'm like thinking, yes, they will see the results, but they won't know that you specifically answered this particular way. So it kind of makes me wonder about our culture of our school and, again, what I appeared or thought it should be and what it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. All right. Anyone else have another thing to add based off of what's going on with our AAPTEL or anything? Are we? All right. So I guess team 3 signing off for our discussion. And thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to stop. There we go.